Good evening, Patriots, and welcome to another edition of the Douglas Ducote Show. You had many places to be tonight, but you chose to be here with me, and for that, I am forever grateful. Thank you very, very much. We are coming up on the next presidential election right around the corner, folks. It's in November of this year, which I'm sure you're all aware, but I have a problem that I foresee happening. And I don't know. I don't think I'm the only one that's aware of this, but I don't see anybody else talking about it. So I figure I may as well talk about it tonight, and as my opening monologue, I guess, and share my knowledge with you about what I see happening that I'm not happy with. You've heard the old saying, putting all your eggs in the same basket, which basically means that you're banking that you're right and you don't have a backup plan. There's no plan B. You're going all in, full speed ahead, and you've done nothing to back you up in the event that there is an emergency situation. Not only do I see the Republicans doing that right now, but I see the Democrats doing it as well. Look, let's talk about the Republicans for a moment. We are just a few months away from the Republican National Convention. And that is when we will put forward who will be running against Joe Biden in November to be president of the United States. And also we will pick and select, or at least approve, who the president, or the person we want to put forward as the president, selects as the vice president. We haven't even got there yet. This doesn't take place until July 15th through the 18th. And the Republicans have put all their eggs into one basket. And that is that they will nominate Donald J. Trump. Now, seeing what we've seen over the past 3.5 years, I sure as hell hope and I pray that Donald Trump is the person that takes on Biden and wipes the slate clean with him. But you see, here's the problem. The Democrats are doing the exact same thing because they realize that Joe Biden this time around doesn't stand a chance at beating Donald Trump. Why? Well, because the world, America personally, has had 3.5 years to watch what Joe Biden is capable of doing. And the American people have watched a complete and utter shameful existence of a president. Someone who has basically destroyed everything, to include trying to destroy our Constitution and take away our freedom of speech, take away our Second Amendment rights, attacks on law enforcement, our military, our veterans, an open border policy, allowing thousands and thousands of illegals to come into the country, to include MS-13 gang members and drug trafficking and sex trafficking of women and children. We've watched this train wreck of Joe Biden. We've watched the world stage go to hell. The world's on fire right now because of incompetent leadership. And no one at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue having the testicles to stand up to world dictators and say no. So the Democrats realize that this time they can talk all they want about what a great job Joe Biden will do if you elect him for 4 more years. But the American people know otherwise because we watched this train wreck. So what are they doing to put all their eggs in the same basket? Well, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to realize that they have weaponized the Department of Justice and the FBI. That's right. The Department of Justice and the FBI work for the Biden administration, period. You can say whatever you want to say about it, Democrats and liberals. That's just the facts. The head law enforcement officer in America happens to be the President of the United States. That person appoints who their Department of Justice head will be and who the head of the FBI will be. And as we've all watched unfold, the Department of Justice and the FBI are going full speed ahead to take down Donald J. Trump, which is where the Democrats come with putting all their eggs in the same basket. Because their only hope is that they will get Trump put in jail, convict him, and lock him away before the election gets here. That's their only hope of keeping the presidency. They've had the opportunity to remove Joe Biden, which I thought for sure they were going to do way before now. Because even the Democrats know that this man is not capable of continuing to run the country. He's not capable of doing anything other than being put in a home somewhere, which is where he needs to be. Nothing against those with mental health issues, but Joe Biden has a serious mental health issue. And sadly, it's unfolding on the world stage. So since they haven't removed Biden, they're counting on the Department of Justice to find him guilty and lock him up. If that happens, Joe Biden skates right into office again for another 4 years, or until he falls on his face or falls up a flight of stairs at the Air Force One and hurts himself seriously, and Kamala Harris becomes the president of the United States. God help us. So, which one has a better chance when you put all your eggs in the same basket with no backup plan? If you follow the trials that I've been following with Donald Trump, it is absolutely amazing how they have shit on the Constitution openly, willingly. They're not even trying to hide it. What they're doing to Donald J. Trump, regardless if he's innocent or guilty, is a travesty of our justice system. We watched these cases and these judges they put forward that are openly donated to Democrat people running for Congress or presidency, whose own family members work for the Biden administration, whether it's their daughter or their son or their wife. Complete and utter bias. We watched the judges, for instance, just yesterday, when Donald Trump asked the judge if he could attend his son's upcoming graduation from high school. And the judge said no. You only graduate from high school once in your life. And the judge said no. Can't postpone the trial for 1 day to allow this guy, Donald J. Trump, to attend his son's graduation from high school. Just like the other judge last month. Donald Trump asked for the trial to be postponed for 1 day so he can attend his mother-in-law's funeral. And the judge denied him. What does that say about our justice system? Could you imagine that happening anywhere else? What's happening right now has never happened in history before. Number one, never has a president ever faced what Donald J. Trump is up against. But the blatant corruption that is openly happening for the whole world to watch is out of control. There is no doubt in anyone's mind that there is a two-tier justice system happening in this country right now. One for Republicans and conservatives and one for Democrats and liberals. And hell, we have, just look at the document situation, the classified documents. I don't give a shit how Donald Trump got them. I don't give a shit how Joe Biden got them. What we watched was a president of the United States left office, had with him documents that were supposedly classified documents that weren't supposed to go with him. They were supposed to go to the National Archives. Whether or not Donald Trump and his lawyers work with the archives or not is irrelevant. Donald Trump had those documents at Mar-a-Lago in a secured facility that he lives in that is guarded and protected by the Secret Service. Joe Biden had the same documents, classified documents, that he took while he was vice president of the United States, that he took when he was a senator in the United States. And he had them in numerous locations, all unsecured, with no Secret Service guarding them. In both of his office buildings that he had, in both of his homes, in his garage, for crying out loud, next to his Corvette, totally unsecured. And when that came out, I came right on this show and I told you, there ain't a snowball chance in hell the Department of Justice will go after Donald Trump for these documents now without going after Joe Biden. You can't. The optics of this, on its face, would destroy the credibility of our justice system and the Department of Justice and the FBI. Yet they did it anyhow. They decided that they weren't going to go after Joe Biden. They put forward an investigation. Trump's investigation lasted a matter of weeks. Joe Biden's lasted almost a year. And the outcome of that investigation was that we will not be charging the president, Joe Biden, although he should be, according to the laws of the land, but we're not going to because he's mentally challenged. He doesn't know right from wrong. He couldn't remember anything. Couldn't remember how they got there. Couldn't remember certain dates they asked him about, certain occasions they asked him about. They even had on record testimony from the person who wrote his book, his biography, that Joe Biden, while at the house, said, I got something for you to add to the book. Let me go get these classified documents out of my garage and show you. He knew he had the classified documents there, and he showed them to the person writing the book. And they ended that investigation by saying that they felt that if it was to go to a jury, they couldn't find him guilty because he's basically an old man that's senile and doesn't know any better, and he's mentally not all there. So therefore, it's over with. Joe Biden doesn't get charged. Trump does. And they continue to go down that rabbit hole of putting Trump away because of those documents. Then there's the Stormy Daniels thing that many district attorneys and judges already have said there's nothing there. We would not even attempt to bring this forward to a trial, much less a grand jury. But not Alvin Bragg's. Oh, no. No. Knowingly saying, if you elect me as the district attorney, I will take Donald Trump down. We've already heard that from other DAs, like the one in Georgia, for instance, in the election interference trial that's going on. Elect me and I will take Donald Trump down. How is that not grounds for tossing that DA off the case? In any other scenario, it would be, but not this one, because the Department of Justice and the FBI has been weaponized by this current administration. They are an arm, a political arm for Joe Biden. The Democrats have put all their eggs in the basket that they will be able to put Donald Trump in prison before the November election gets here. Because that is the only way in hell Joe Biden would beat Donald Trump this time after what we watched Joe Biden do over the past 3.5 years. No one in their right mind, no matter how much you dislike Donald Trump, could honestly go vote for Joe Biden after what he's done to this country and the world, unless you're an anti-American, horrible, disgusting person. I would challenge your moral beliefs and values if you can honestly say that Joe Biden should be elected for 4 more years. I know many, many Democrats, and I used to be one, that are disgusted with what's happening to this country and the world right now because of Joe Biden. Now, they also don't like Donald Trump, but they prefer to vote for Donald Trump, a guy they detest, over what Joe Biden in his mental capacity is doing to this country. So what happens? What happens, folks, if they put Donald Trump in jail between now and the election? We still have a trial waiting to happen. It's moving forward on the January 6th debacle, where they want to say that Donald Trump committed treason. He tried to take over the country, basically, and stay in power. And that he caused what happened on January 6th at the Capitol. That he orchestrated it. They're throwing all their eggs in that basket for that, folks. And if you look at who's being selected for these trials, look, everybody knows, everybody, that you cannot find a jury that's going to be not biased. You are either Team Trump or you're Team Biden. There's no in between anymore. You either hate one or the other or you love one or the other. That's how this is playing out. And as we move closer and closer to the election, let's just say that, well, we know right now that we do have in front of the Supreme Court, we have an opportunity for the justices to decide whether or not a former president can be held in the way they're doing it and charged for this crime of insurrection that took place on January 6th at the Capitol, or whether he's immune from that. Because if they don't say that, then that opens up a can of worms for future presidents of the United States. They'll then have to be worried about any decision they make, could then land them in prison after they get out of office, takes away any executive privilege that they have. And that is a slope that no one needs to go down. So let's just say August, September rolls around, maybe October, and they pull off what they're betting on, the Democrats, that is, putting Donald J. Trump in prison. There's no backup plan for the GOP. None. Zero. Now, am I saying that they should not, at the convention, select Donald Trump? It's not what I'm saying. It's their option. Same thing with the Democrats. But what I'm telling you is, if the Democrats pull this off, which is what they're banking on, Donald Trump goes to prison. They find him guilty, he goes to prison on one of these charges. Joe Biden walks back into 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue for another 4 more years, or until he falls over and is over with. At the same time, if he doesn't, and come election day, Donald Trump is not in prison, the Democrats lose. And Donald J. Trump becomes the president of the United States again. You can take that to the bank. The Democrats have one way of winning in November, and the Republicans have only one way of winning in November. And that's putting all your eggs in the same basket. I can only hope that there is a backup plan that the GOP has in place in the event that Donald J. Trump is charged and arrested. Because they need to activate that plan before the ink dries on the paperwork to put him in prison. Otherwise, there won't be time. And you'd only be voting on party, not whether or not the person that you're voting for is competent to beat Joe Biden or not. So think about that. Our top story for tonight, a group of Senate Republicans are urging President Biden to block oil sanctions relief for the Venezuelan government. Venezuela is an authoritarian regime which continues to oppress its opponents, which is kind of like what we have going on right here in America. Election interference and oppression against the opponent, which is Donald J. Trump. Moving on, the 7 lawmakers, led by Senator Dan Sullivan, sent a letter to the president last Friday, calling on him to cancel the General Lease 44, which is set to come up for renewal later this week. They argue that Venezuelan government has failed to meet key requirements related to ensuring fair elections that it agreed to when the Biden administration issued the 6-month license last year. History proven time and time again that appeasing dictators does not work. We strongly urge you to reinstate and fully enforce all U.S. sanctions on the Maduro regime, they wrote. Nicolas Maduro is his name, actually. We must not cede American leverage by lifting U.S. sanctions while the Maduroan government deliberately disregards its obligations. If the U.S. fails to take a credible stance on ensuring free and fair elections are held in Venezuela, and why would they when we're not, the prospects of the Democrat Venezuelan will continue to diminish, just like here in America, which will further embolden authoritarian aggressions such as the People's Republic of China, Iran, and Russia. The lawmakers continued. In October, Venezuelan President Maduro signed an agreement with the nation's opposing opposition leaders, agreeing to freer elections as part of the deal in which the U.S. Treasury Department eased sanctions on the South American country's key oil sector. However, the Maduro regime almost immediately began taking action in apparent violation of the deal, cracking down on the opposition and imposing political opponents ahead of the Venezuelan upcoming presidential election slated for July of 2024. Just like we're doing right here in America to Donald J. Trump. The State Department said in October it would not review the General Release 44 absent progress by the Venezuelan government. The October agreement broadly authorized oil and gas transactions with Venezuela and came a year after the Biden administration granted a separate lease for California-based energy firm Chevron to continue drilling in Venezuela. According to federal data, U.S. oil imports from Venezuela have spiked from 0 barrels in December of 2022 to nearly 5 million barrels in January. In 2019, the Trump administration imposed heavy sanctions on the nation's oil industry after a dispute arose between their president and the opposition leader, Juan Guaidó, over the 2018 presidential election. Those sanctions led to a fall off of U.S. imports of Venezuelan oil. The rule, once finalized, is on track to be the 61st action by this administration targeting Alaska and American oil production. Like many others, it ignores the laws on the books and has been done without real conciliation of impact on Alaska Native communities, Texas, Louisiana, the Gulf of Mexico, and everywhere else that we get our oil from normally. When we have a Republican in office, we tend to want to drill here so that we're not relying on oil and gas from countries that don't like us. And Joe Biden has made it very clear when it comes to this Venezuela deal where he'd prefer to get the oil from. American and Israeli experts issued scathing indictments of President Biden's alleged timid Iran policy after Tehran launched a massive aerial warfare attack on the Jewish state over the weekend. The Islamic Republic, for the first time, executed direct missile and drone strikes into Israeli territory. The dramatic events in the heart of the Middle East have triggered calls for the Biden administration to reverse its reportedly dovish outreach to the Ayatollahs who run the country of Iran. Biden is now urging Israel to recoil from a counter-strike. This was a massive, unprecedented, and unacceptable strategic attack on Israel, Richard Goldberg, who is a member of former President Trump's National Security Council, said. It would be a huge mistake to pull Israel back from a military retaliation, but it's downright insanity to keep $10 billion accessible to Iran in the aftermath. And I say it's treason, to be honest with you. The president needs to lock down all the money he made available to Iran these past months. Last month, it was reported that Biden defied opponents of Iran's regime and waived sanctions on Iran's cash-starved economy. Biden faced criticism after releasing as much as $10 billion into the coffers of the Islamic Republic. In January, an Iranian regime-sponsored proxy terrorist attack killed 3 U.S. soldiers in Jordan. The Biden administration insisted that Iran's regime can't use the funds for its growing military offensive arsenal. Critics urge that the $10 billion is fundable money, and the financial allegations allows Iran to reverse its budget to expand its military apparatus. Goldberg, who is a senior advisor from the Foundation of Defense and Democracies, added, If the president is looking for economic and diplomatic responses to the Iranian attack, there are three obvious ones available. Lock down the $10 billion, enforce U.S. oil sanctions, and snap back UN sanctions. If Biden avoids these steps, this isn't an escalation and avoidance. It's continued appeasement. White House National Security Communications Advisor John Kirby, who I think is a useless, pathetic weasel, rejected criticism of the administration, has not been tough on Iran. Noting the sanctions and other measures used against Iran, it's hard to take a look at what President Biden has done and say, we've somehow gone soft on Iran, he continued. It was the previous administration that decided to get us out of the Iran deal. And now Iran is so much dramatically closer to potential nuclear weapon capability than they were before Mr. Trump was elected. So now, like everything else this administration fucks up, they blame it on Donald J. Trump. You couldn't make that shit up if you tried. Quiz on the financial relief given to Iran and how the regime used it, he said. It's not even sanctions relief, but the additional funds that have been made available to Iran due to the sanctions relief program the Trump administration put into place can only be used for humanitarian goods. It doesn't go to the regime, John Kirby said. And that, by the way, is a bald-faced lie. Former Director of National Intelligence, John Ratcliffe, who appeared on Sunday Morning Futures, said he believed the Biden administration's reaction to the death of the IRGC generals in Syria following the reported Israeli attack showed how fractured the relationship with Israel had become and that it had emboldened Iran. Shortly after Iran's proxy, Hamas, slaughtered 1,200 people, including over 30 Americans, in southern Israel, that the Biden administration and its European allies allowed UN sanctions to be lifted on Iran's capability to purchase and supply missiles to enemies of the U.S. and Israel. The State Department spokesperson said at the time that the snapback mechanism is not expiring and remains in place. We do not rely solely on the UNSCR 2231 to restrict Iran's dangerous development and proliferation of missile-related technologies and UAVs, but rather a comprehensive set of multilateral and unilateral tools. The small print of that is, we don't have a fucking clue what we're doing. We're incompetent. The spokesperson went on to say, we continue to use all our tools to counter Iran's missile and UAV development and proliferation, including sanctions, unilateral and multilateral export controls, interactive activities, diplomatic engagements, cooperation with private industry. The small print of that statement is, we did nothing and we are incompetent. Lisa Dutfrey, a leading Iranian-American expert of the Islamic Republican and editor-in-chief of the Foreign Desk, said the Biden administration's posture in the first hours of coming to the White House was that they were going to go soft on the Iranian regime. Their policies reflect this. Their rhetoric reflects this. They sent a clear message to the mullahs that there would be no consequences for their rogue activity and actions. What we're seeing is a manifestation of weak policies and the Ayatollah's correct read on American foreign policy. A State Department spokesman says Iran's political, financial, and material support to terror groups, Hamas among them, is well documented and, in fact, trumpeted by the regime. Iran is the world's leading state sponsor of terrorism. The regime prioritized financing Hamas and proxy groups to the expense of its own people and is stabilized in the region. Yakva Katz, a leading Israeli expert in security and defense of the Jewish state, said that Iran has been given immunity since October 7th, despite the continued attacks by its proxies, Hamas, Houthis, and Hezbollah. What happened on Saturday night was a direct, unprecedented Iranian attack against Israel. The containment policy does not work, and the world strategy and diplomacy and sanctions is not effective. The world needs to shift gears and change the way it has tried to confront Iran. And look, I will go on record once again and say the only way Iran will fall into line with normal human dignity is by overwhelming force, use of military power of the United States and NATO. And we probably will never see that during this current administration because they're weak on leadership and they put people in positions of power that are not competent and do not have the education or the experience to do any of the jobs they're in a position of. They're in those positions based on their sexual orientation and their race only. And that's not how you run a country. The FBI is conducting a criminal investigation into last month's Francis Scott Key Bridge collapse, which led to the death of 6 construction workers. The FBI's investigation, which was confirmed yesterday, comes as a new report claims that the bridge collapse was allegedly a terrorist attack directed by the Chinese Communist Party. Is that shocking news to you? Have you heard Fox talk about it, or CNN, or MSNBC, or ABC, or CBS, or NBC? Is anybody talking about this? 2 U.S. officials told the Washington Post that officials are currently investigating the events that led to the Dalek container ship losing power and crashing into one of the Baltimore Bridge's main support pillars. The outlet noted that the FBI criminal investigation will consider whether the Dalek's crew knew the ship had problems prior to leaving the port. The FBI is present aboard the cargo ship, conducting court-authorized law enforcement activity, the FBI said yesterday in a statement obtained by the New York Post. While the FBI confirmed it was investigating the container ship, the agency did not provide additional details concerning the investigation. And they're not going to because Joe Biden is in bed with China and has made billions of dollars along with his family members from China and Ukraine. Yesterday, the FBI said there is no other public information available. We will have no further comment. How convenient. According to the New York Post, 2 deficiencies were found over the course of 27 inspections on the Dalek ship since it was constructed in 2015, and the most recent deficiency discovered in June of 2023. Following the collapse of the Baltimore Bridge last month, Governor Wes Moore, Democrat, said the primary investigation into the incident pointed to an accident. At the time, the Maryland governor said the investigation had not revealed any credible evidence of a terrorist attack. Now, let me remind you that he made those remarks within 24 hours of that bridge coming down. And I told you right here on this show, how in the hell did they come to that conclusion? I think it was actually less than 24 hours. That they were already saying, oh, no, there was no terrorist attack here. It was, there's nothing to prove that. It was an accident. Bill DeBango, the FBI special agent in charge of the Baltimore field office, also confirmed that there was no specific or credible information to suggest there are ties to terrorism. A new video published by NFSC Speaks, self-described as a whistleblower movement founded by Miles Aguro, an exiled Chinese businessman and political activist with the goal of taking down the Chinese Communist Party, claims that the Baltimore Bridge incident was allegedly a terrorist attack launched by the Chinese Communist Party. Today, we're going to bring you a piece of exclusive intelligence that we have received from our supporters within the CCP. said in the video. This attack is being carried out by the Chinese Party, the Chinese Communist Party, using remote towing technology. It is a terrorist attack. The NFSC warned that the Chinese Communist Party would tow a freighter to collapse Baltimore's bridge. The CCP told to do things this way. Any vehicle you can think of that has a signal chip radio antenna. The whistleblower movement also claimed that people inside the U.S. government allegedly knew that the Chinese Communist Party had been involved in the bridge collapse and did not report on it. However, the NFSC added that no additional or official statement has been made to confirm any other allegations that are being said. It's my guess that that person or persons are going to accidentally commit suicide. You can bet there won't be any further investigation into them. A Democrat-controlled city. Boy, don't you love those? That's where all the shit goes to hell in a handbasket across this country. Your black-on-black crime, your drugs, your Antifa, your BLM. Announced $45 million in funding for programs to help deal with the skyrocketing number of migrants arriving it is facing, resulting in over $8 million in budget cuts to the police department. Democrat Denver Mayor Mike Johnson announced a package of $45.9 million to fully fund programs for newcomers for 2024 and avoid worst-case scenarios projected by the city. That's in addition to $44 million in spending already secured for the program through previous budget moves. Spending on migrants in the city skyrocketed last year from $2 million a month in August to $15 million in December. Now listen closely. In January, migrant numbers peaked at only around 5,000 people in shelters, but have since dropped to around 1,000. Yet they need all this money. After more than a year facing this crisis, Denver finally has a sustainable plan for treating our newcomers with dignity while avoiding the worst cuts to city services, Johnson said. The mayor's office said it will avoid layoffs or furloughs of employees, but there will still be cuts to find the extra $45.9 million in funding. The mayor's office will see its budget cut by nearly 10%. Denver's police department, meanwhile, will have its budget cut by $8.4 million. And about $5 million of that will come from restricting hiring for opening positions, according to 9 News reporting in Denver. Police officers will still be hired by Denver International Airport, which will pay for the cost of recruiting classes themselves. Elsewhere, the city's fire department have its budget cut by less than 1% of about $2.5 million, largely from not filling open positions. Funded as part of the new spending will be a new Denver Asylum Seekers program. It will apply to around 1,000 people in the shelter system and will connect them with housing assistance options for 6 months until they can get a work permit under their asylum claims. There will also be a work-ready program described as the innovative pre-work authorization readiness program by which migrants can be connected with training opportunities, including language instructions. It's the latest battle by liberal cities to deal with the flow of migrants that have surged into their communities, whether the migrants moving by themselves or being bused from places like Texas and Florida. New York City last year proposed significant budget cuts, including to the police, but later reversed them and growth in revenue. Chicago has also faced massive pressures on its budget over the number of migrants coming in. So it's Let's make sure we understand this. Spending on migrants last year, $2 million a month. But by December, $15 million for only 5,000 migrants. And now we need to up it to $45.9 million for only 1,000 migrants. Where in the fuck is that money going? Are we making 1,000 illegal aliens millionaires? Are we putting them up in mansions and letting them drive Rolls-Royce cars, buying them fucking helicopters? What are we doing up there, Denver? Inquiring minds would love to know. President Biden has now falsely claimed that he was the first person in his family to go to college, continuing a decades-long habit of making false or embellished claims about his life. Biden has been scrutinized several times over the years for fabricating tales, including a claim that he was arrested in South Africa, was in a helicopter forced down by Al-Qaeda insurgents in Afghanistan, and even travel events involving an Amtrak conductor who had actually died before Biden's alleged story even took place. Biden continued the trend yesterday while speaking in the battleground state of Wisconsin as he outlined his plan to provide life-changing relief for student loan debt. I, like an awful lot of people in this audience, was the first in my family to go to college, Biden told the crowd. However, less than 2 years ago, during a speech in Pennsylvania, Biden told an audience his grandfather played college football. My grandfather, Finnegan from Scranton, would really be proud of me right now, Biden said in Pittsburgh in October of 2022. No, I'm not joking. He would. By the way, he was an All-American football player in Santa Clara. When asked about Biden's recent comments and his embellishment through the years, White House Deputy Press Secretary Andrew Bates said President Biden is proud to have restored honest integrity and respect for the Oval Office and the rule of law. He added that Biden is also proud to be the first Biden to graduate college. Mr. Bates, that's not the answer to the question that you were asked. You were asked, why does Joe Biden keep lying and embellishing on shit? And all you can answer with is spinning the question and answer. Biden's exaggerations regarding college also extend to a previous claim that he taught political theory at the University of Pennsylvania when he mentioned during a speech in Maryland in September of 2023. He didn't. That's another lie. Biden said, democracy is at stake, folks. Our democracy is under attack, and we got to fight for it. I taught at the University of Pennsylvania for 4 years, and I used to teach political theory. And folks, you always hear every generation has to fight for democracy, and I found myself, it's automatic. We didn't have to believe it, but we do, he said. Well, there's no evidence whatsoever that exists that Biden ever taught political theory at the University of Pennsylvania or at any university on planet Earth. While the university's website notes that Joe Biden was the Benjamin Franklin Presidential Professor of Practice from 2017 to 2021, Snoops.com fact-checked on his previous but similar claims that he was a full professor at the University of Pennsylvania for 4 years and found that he did not teach not even a single semester of courses. Snoops noted that his role was honorary and that he gave lectures and talks to students on campus, but did not even teach a semester course during his entire time there. Years before, when he ran for president back in 1987, Biden exaggerated his academic record by bragging he graduated in the top half of his class while braving a reporter on the campaign trail. I think I have much higher IQ than you, he told the reporter. I suspect, Biden told the reporter in New Hampshire at the time, I went to law school on a full academic scholarship, the only one in my class to have a full academic scholarship. In the first year of law school, I decided I didn't want to be a lawyer and go to law school. And I ended up at the bottom 2/3 of my class, he said. And then I decided to stay, went back to law school, and in fact, ended up in the top half of my class. Only to later admit that he graduated 76 in his class. I did not graduate in the top half of my class at law school. My recollection is that this was inaccurate, he told the New York Times when he was called out on it. I graduated from the University of Delaware from double major in history and political science, he said. My reference to degrees at the Claremont event was extended to referring to these majors. I said 3, when I should have only said 2. The outlet pointed out that Biden received a singular bachelor's degree in history and political science and nothing else. Since then, Biden has told numerous stories that have also been deemed exaggerations. Mainstream outlets, including the Washington Post, have even called him out on them, including the publication's top fact checker, Glenn Kaiser. In September last year, Kaiser penned an article about how Biden loves to retell certain stories that never happened and how they lack credibility. His report assembled several of Biden's accounts, including one about an Amtrak conductor he claimed held him for having traveled more than 2 million miles on the railroad, exceeding the 1.2 million miles traveled on Air Force planes as vice president as of 2016. However, that conductor retired in 1993 and died 2 years before Biden reached that milestone in the first place. Other stories Kaiser addressed included Biden claiming his own father saw 2 men in suits kissing each other in public when he was a teenager, and that he was arrested while trying to see Nelson Mandela in South Africa, and how as vice president, he arranged for his uncle to be presented a Purple Heart he was owed and never received. The uncle died in 1999, by the way, long before Biden was vice president. Biden has also repeatedly called out for claims of being close to Somali cab drivers in Wilmington, Delaware. Somalians have made my city, Wilmington, Delaware, their home on a smaller scale. There's a very indelible Somali community, Vice President Biden said at the time. I might add that you can come on the train station with me. You notice I have a great relationship with them because there's an awful lot of cab drivers and they're friends of mine, for real, he said. I'm not being salacious. I'm being serious. PolitiFact, a liberal fact-checking website, rated that the statement was pants on fire and said the statement set eyes rolling. Other outlets also covered the claim and dismissed it as strange and insensitive. Biden also repeated a false claim last year about his house burning down in an attempt to relate to those who lost their homes in the wildfires in Maui, Hawaii. I don't want to compare difficulties, but we have a little sense, Jill and I, of what it was like to lose a home, Biden said. Years now, 15 years, I was in Washington doing Meet the Press. Lightning struck our home, a little lake outside the home, not a lake, but a big pond, and hit the wire and came up underneath the house to the air conditioning ducts. To make a long story short, I almost lost my wife, my 67 Corvette, and my cat, the president added. Oh, and I should say that he almost lost thousands of classified documents that he took illegally and stored next to that Corvette. Anyway, a 2004 report from the Associated Press said lightning struck the Biden's home. That is true. And it did start a fire, although small, and was contained to the kitchen only. The report said firefighters got the blaze under control within 20 minutes of getting the call, which means it probably took them 15 to get there and 5 to put the fire out. And they were able to keep it to only the kitchen, and it never spread any further through the house. And to me, the biggest lie he continues to tell, even after being called out on it over and over and over again, is that his son, Beau Biden, died while serving in the Iraq War. He continues to tell this lie whenever he is in front of Gold Star families. And those are the families that lost their loved ones while serving in war. And that is a slap in the face to those families. You see, Joe Biden's son, Beau Biden, he did die. He died in 2015, 6 years after returning from serving in Iraq with the Delaware National Guard. He did not die from an enemy bullet in Iraq. He did not die from a roadside IED in Iraq or engage with the enemy in any way, shape, or form. He died right here in America of a brain cancer. So here's my question to anyone who voted for Joe Biden or plans to vote for Joe Biden this coming November. Joe tells stories that are not true. Is he a pathological liar? Yes. Is it because he has a mental illness such as a psychotic disorder? Maybe. Could it be a personality disorder such as narcissism, obsessive compulsive disorder, dementia, amnesia, or drug use? After all, the Secret Service did find cocaine in the White House last year. Regardless of what causes this man to be a pathological liar, this should be enough to make you see the light that this man is not fit to be a ditch digger, much less the President of the United States of America. But all you Democrats and liberals want to do is continue to bash Donald J. Trump of being a horrible, horrible, disgusting, racist person. Not because of what he did to the country, but because he has mean tweets every now and then, because he says what's on his mind, because he's not politically correct, and that if you attack him, he goes for your throat, full speed ahead. That's why you don't like him. He gets your panties all up in a wad. He hurts your feelings. Well, if your feelings get hurt because of Donald Trump, then your parents failed you. They raised a snowflake liberal pussy. And you don't deserve to be able to vote. You had many places to be tonight. You chose to be here with me, and for that, I am forever grateful. Thank you very, very much. In the description of this show, all my shows, all my videos, you see the other places you can follow me on social media. Follow me there. I'll follow you back. That's how we do this. That's how we spread the word of what's happening. As we get closer and closer to this election, I'll be happy to speak out more and more and push the envelope of YouTube and the other social media areas that want to censor what we say and do. I will always be true to myself and true to you with bringing you factual information. It may not be what Democrats and liberals want to hear, but it's the truth. It's what's happening. It's what everyone needs to be aware of. And the sooner we start realizing that across this country, the better off we will be. If you haven't already done so, please subscribe to the channel. As always, please say a prayer for our men and women serving in the United States military, our veterans, our law enforcement officers, our first responders, their families, our angel families, our blue and gold star families in our country. May God bless the United States of America. May God bless each and every one of you. Folks, I will not be here on Thursday night. Tomorrow is my birthday. And Thursday night, I'm having my parents over and some of my relatives to celebrate my birthday. Plus, my dad's birthday was April 1st. So we're going to celebrate the two birthdays on Thursday night. So there will be no show Thursday night. But if anything breaks between now and show of next Tuesday, I'll be sure to come out and do something about it, whether it's a live show or whether it's a video. But until then, whatever you're doing tonight or this week, please be safe. Please watch over yourself, your family, and I'll see you back here real soon. Take care. God bless you, and God bless America.